What happens if someone breaks a bone 140 million miles from the nearest hospital? We know Elon Musk wants to send humans to Mars, but what if there's an emergency and Earth can't help? That's why this surgeon, Dr. Chris Rayner, says we need more than astronauts. We need a medical team.
You have no access to medical care. You are the medical care.
You said there's many reasons. Give me
Hmm.
a couple of the reasons why you feel an orthopedic surgeon would be of value. A lot of people are wondering who's going to go on this first flight to Mars? How are they going to weed out? I'm sure a lot of people would love to go or they're willing to die on the mission, but are they really the best pick to ensure survival? Because this is not going to be easy, even psychologically.
You need to have somebody with medical training. You need to have somebody who's a physician, at least a physician's assistant, paramedic, nurse practitioner. I would say a nurse might not be enough, but over and above that, you would need to have a surgeon. And I'm not saying orthopedic surgeon yet. I'm just kind of narrowing down. I think you need to have somebody who has a surgeon, because you need to have somebody who is able to do surgical procedures, medical procedures that are of an invasive nature, because you have no access to medical care. You are the medical care, or whoever's traveling with you is the medical care. So random things do happen. People can either get hurt or they can get ill. You could have appendicitis. You could have an acute abdomen. You could have a bunch of other things. So you need to have somebody who has medical training in order to do those things. While it's possible that you could have somebody who's not medically trained in all procedures do stuff by watching a video or receiving a transmission, they're not going to be able to do all things. And depending on the distance that you are away, so if you are close to Mars, that's basically 20 minutes of transmission, 8 minutes one way, 8 minutes the other way back. You need somebody who can function independently without having to wait to get a response. Oh, what do I cut that? Do I not cut that? So you need somebody who has surgical skills. But the reason why I say they would need an orthopedic surgeon is because in addition to all of the medical issues that occur, you're going to need somebody who can deal with the skeleton. You're traveling and you're weightless, and there are different ways to simulate gravity, and there are different things that they do on the ISS to try to stimulate bone stress so that they can maintain bone homeostasis during extended periods. But really, you're going to have a lot of osteopenia, a lot of osteoporosis, bone softening, weakening, which is going to make people susceptible to fractures. When you've traveled now for 6 or 7 months, even if you've had simulated gravity, which is a fraction of regular what we're used to on Earth, your bones are going to be osteoporotic, osteopenic. And even if you have reduced gravity on Mars, you are still going to be susceptible to injury, man. Like you trip, you're going to break a leg. You're going to need somebody who can do that. Most likely it's going to be somebody who is a general surgeon, because general surgeons, they can basically do all the internal procedures for soft tissue organs. And old school general surgeons could do some orthopedic surgery. So to be honest, it'll probably be somebody who is a general surgeon. They'll definitely need to have an understanding, at least a rudimentary understanding of orthopedic surgical procedures and techniques.
Let's say something did happen and there is an orthopedic surgeon on board. How how much would they have to bring of like supplies and stuff? There's not a lot of space.
You'd have to have a very rudimentary, basic trauma kit. Obviously, you need what we call our knives and forks. So you need your all the scalpels, retractors, basic retractors, that kind of stuff to be able to hold open wounds. You would also need to have power instruments. When we're putting plates and screws, we have to drill holes, and you could do it by with non-power instruments, but it would just make it really, really tedious to do that. You'd need to have a basic power setup, basic medical drill, and a basic medical saw. And then you could have basic sets of plates. Generally, in orthopedics, we have two different kinds of sets. There's many, many different kinds of sets, but we have what we call our small fragment sets. And that's for like hand, wrist, ankle, relatively small bones. And so those are screws and plates of a particular size. So we have our small fragment, and then we have our large fragment. That is more for femur, humerus, and larger bones. So bigger screws, bigger plates. So you would, I think, need to have a basic small frag set, basic large frag set. There's special stuff that if we were on Earth, we could have, but I don't think it would make sense to bring those things, because you can do most of the stuff that you need to do with those plates. You had a nail for your femoral fracture. I don't think that they would bring nails, just because the setup that you need to put that stuff in takes up too much space. Like you need what's called a fracture table. You would need, generally speaking, a larger fluoro or X-ray machine to do those things. And I think that's just out of the question. You'd need a small fluoro machine. So that's the X-ray. It's portable X-ray. So we call the regular sized fluoro, which allows you to do hip fractures, femur fractures, all that stuff. We call that just a basic C-arm, and then they have a mini C-arm. And I think probably the mini C-arm is what they would use or bring. You could bring an external fixator frame set. So that's for when we have really bad comminuted multifragmentary fractures that are difficult to put a plate on. We will sometimes put pins that go out through the skin, and then we'll put an external frame on that. So I think it probably makes sense to do that, although I know I would be really hesitant to have somebody on a trip like that away from medical care and have them with an external fixator frame for a long period of time, just because the pins that are going into the bone are also going through the skin. And even if you keep those pin sites clean and covered, that's always an avenue for infection. And so that's something I just would not want to try to have to deal with. If somebody getting osteomyelitis or an infection of the bone or a deep tissue infection, and then you got to treat them with IV antibiotics for an extended period of time. So I wouldn't do that, but I think it's probably good to have. So small frag, large frag, basic power instruments, your knife and fork kit, a dissection tray, or a mini C-arm. You could probably get away with most of the stuff, because I would anticipate, although yes, you could have long bone fractures, I would anticipate much of the stuff that you're going to see is probably smaller. Basic plates.
What is the most common broken bone, and what do you think could be the most common broken bone in space, whether it's on the journey or like in the actual, Mars or moon environment?
I'll give you the three most common. The three most common things that I see are wrists, ankles, and hips. And that's me in a community setting. It might be a little bit different if you were in a larger tertiary care center, but so those are the most common. And of those, wrists and ankles are the most common that I treat. Having said that, I think because our bone health is very tightly associated with our exposure to gravity, because bone growth occurs in response to the stresses that are imparted upon it. So that's kind of a response that is called Wolff's Law. So bone responds to the stresses that you place upon it. So without gravity or reduced gravity, you're going to see osteopenia and osteoporosis, or osteopenia, so softening of the bone, in your entire skeleton. Where you are going to notice that most is in your bigger bones, and i.e., so your femur, leg bones, that kind of stuff. If you think about the guys on the ISS, all they're doing is they're floating around within this small container. They're not actually out and about walking on the surface of any planet. And so if you have to go from being under reduced gravity for 7 months, and then now going out and having to walk on a terrestrial surface. You just look at the astronauts when they come back from extended stays, they never ever stand up right away. Like if they've been in the ISS for a week or something like that, or a couple of weeks, no problem, right? But everybody else who's been there for an extended period of time, they are seated. They carry them out. They don't allow them to stand. They never are walking. And that's because they could walk and they could break a leg, man. They could break a hip. And so I think the same kind of thing is certainly a significant risk on Mars. And although wrists and ankles are quite common here on Earth, hip fractures are a very close third. And I think after an extended space stay and then walking on another terrestrial planet, I think probably hip fractures are going to be fairly significant.
It's interesting because Don Pettit just came home. He turned 70 years old while in space, oldest astronaut. And he said, I felt like a kid because I didn't have all these aches and pains. And, so.
You feel great, right? Because you don't have the effect of gravity, working on your joints and on your skeleton. But once you get back to Earth, the reality hits in. Most of the astronaut cadre now, the people who are going up, there are some younger ones, but most of them that are going up are kind of in their 50s, right? But when I heard that, I was like 70s. I was like, yeah, there's still an outside chance, man. I could do it. But to be honest, like I think now, although I would love to do it, my body's not what it was before. I've had several surgeries. I've got, mild arthritis in both my knees from multiple surgeries. And I got some high blood pressure now. So I go, yeah, they're not sending me, man, because I'm too much of a risk.
Oh, well, I bet you could go on like a 3 to 5 day SpaceX Crew Dragon mission.
Oh, I could do that. Yeah, I just couldn't go on an extended stay.
Well, maybe you could, I mean, they're going to have to start broadening the horizon as far as, applicants and who's eligible to go, especially
for sure. Especially if they're going to try to create industry on another planet, right? Even if you're just doing it in space, if you're doing it on the moon, you're going to need people who have certain skill sets. Like Ottawa, where I live, is a very white collar community because it's a government town, university. There's 2 universities here. So it's very highly educated. That's the community. But I live here, but I work in a more rural community. And that community is smaller, very blue collar. And so I see lots of people who have the skill sets that would be required to do, these are fabricators, metal workers, they're construction people, all those kinds of stuff. Those people are not necessarily, like, this is not universally true, but lots of those people that have that skill set aren't necessarily the healthiest people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They tend to smoke. They tend to, they live hard, man. And so you will need those people. Not everybody that goes up is going to be super fit and super healthy. So they will have to sort of broaden their eligibility requirements just so that they can get the people with the right skill sets up there.
Starship is designed to carry up to 100 people to Mars, though initial missions may have fewer passengers due to cargo, supplies, and mission-specific needs.
So who do you think is essential on that flight?
Definitely you need to have people who have the ability to fly and maneuver the spacecraft if it comes to that, right? Like, so you're going to need to have people who have piloting skills. You will definitely need to have engineers, man. Engineers and fabricators. So if shit goes sideways, the ship breaks, something happens, you need people who can figure out what's going on and then fix what's going on. But you will definitely need to have psychologists, psychiatrists, somebody like that. Because you put 100 to 150 people in a sardine can, and they have nowhere to go to escape each other for 6 to 7 months at a time, that is going to be a problem. So you're going to need to have those people. Obviously, you're going to need to have people who are medically trained. This is not necessarily like the military, but if I would think about the military equivalent, so in the Canadian military, we have a rapid response medical team. When we send our special forces, Canadian special forces, when they go on a mission, obviously they want to travel quick, and they don't bring a whole contingent with them. What they do is they have their operators, and then they have this MSRT. So the MSRT team is made up of a general surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, anesthesiologist, a critical care nurse, and 2 medical techs. So that's 6 people. And with those 6 people, like you can't do everything, but you can do what you need to do to stabilize somebody, so that like if they're blown up in an IED or whatever, you can stabilize them and they can be flown somewhere. You keep them alive long enough so that they can be flown somewhere to have definitive care. So you would have to have something similar to that, right? Obviously, you're not going to fly these people anywhere because they're going to be stuck on this ship or on Mars, but it would have to be something like that. So you'd have to have sort of a rapid response medical team on the first couple of trips. Like you don't need to have accountants and all that kind of stuff, man. You just need to have laborers.
Yeah.
Like just people who can work. Because of the space constraints, they're going to be looking for people who have multiple skill sets. And also you're going to need to have some people who can keep the peace, right? Whether they're military people, police people, whatever. You're going to need to have some kind of law enforcement, because in the event that people go sideways, you need to have somebody who can control that. That would be my initial cadre of people, I think. Until a colony is actually established, you're not going to need much other than that. Oh, and you'll probably need some communications people, and you'll need people obviously who are computer literate, who can program computers, reprogram, write code, all of that kind of stuff. So you'll need that as well.
Do you think that they would want more than one surgeon if there were that many people able to go on the first flight?
Yes, more than one surgeon, and just like you have that rapid response medical team that I'm talking about, you're gonna want at the very least general surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, and anesthesia. With that, you can cover most things.
What would be your biggest concerns? Let's say that they do the first journey and everything goes fine on the transportation element, but like that first visit to Mars, I mean, what are you concerned about?
Obviously we're concerned about some of the musculoskeletal stuff that we talked about. So deconditioning, potential for fractures, all of that kind of stuff. But then are we going to be able to create enough oxygen on the surface? They talk about the ice on the polar ice caps, and being able to use that to take the water and be able to create oxygen, and then also to create methane with that, using the Sabatier reaction. So hopefully we'll have enough of those things, because if you don't have oxygen, you die. You don't have water, you die. Then another thing that people don't really think about, so you have less exposure to the sun, so your ability to get vitamin D is no good. And every time you're out and getting sun exposure, you're going to be covered with a suit. So that's a problem. You need vitamin D for a bunch of things. You need it for cardiovascular function, but you need it for bones and your bone health. So already we're osteopenic when we arrive. And then on top of that, we are getting no sun exposure except on our face when we're there. So that's going to be a problem. Then you have to worry about the Martian regolith. Number one, your ability to for the suits to keep that out. Not only suits, but you have to worry about all of the filtration systems that are there. Like anytime people go in and out, depending on how they do it, I've seen different designs where the suit it basically lives on the outside of the structure, and then the back of the suit goes onto an airlock, and it basically it comes off, and then you're inside the structure. Perhaps you could do that, but Martian regolith is going to get in. It's going to start to soil things, and if it's like the moon regolith, it's super razor sharp. It's going to destroy stuff, destroy seals, destroy filters. So then that's a problem. So you have to worry about the integrity of your structure degrading, the integrity of all of those seals degrading. Martian atmosphere is super thin compared to the Earth, so quite a bit more exposure to radiation, and that is going to be a significant problem. It's not that people are going to instantaneously die from that, no, but it's just that during the travel, there's going to be increased exposure to cosmic rays and other forms of radiation. And then when you're on the planet, anytime that you're outside of the ship, anytime that you're not being shielded by either water or by a meter worth of regolith, you're going to be getting additional cosmic rays and ultraviolet rays that you wouldn't normally be exposed to. And so over time, that's going to have an effect, because at any time you get hit by one of those energetic particles, it basically flies through you, except that it does nasty things to your DNA as those particles go through you. Like the wonderful thing about energetic rays and the damage that they do to DNA is that you can't even see, like a DNA bond is so small that you cannot see it with the naked eye. You can't even see it with a normal microscope, right? Like you need like an electron microscope to see these things. All it takes is one particle cutting a bond between two nucleotides to like screw up your DNA sequence, which you don't, it's not like you go, ow, oh, geez, I got shot. That's not what happens. But when those cells go to replicate, now the photocopy has been, the original from which the photocopy is making a copy has been smudged, and instead of it saying UAT at that, or well, no, it wouldn't be UAC. I'm throwing out random sequences of nucleotide bases. It might say UAA or UA garbled message, and either the cell can't replicate and dies, or it makes what's called a transcription error. It reads the wrong message, and then it creates a protein that doesn't work, or you have cancer. So that's a significant problem. And then again, it's not something that's necessarily going to show up right away, but the people who go on that trip are going to have a significantly increased risk of cancer or problems due to changes that occur to their DNA and to their cell structure due to energetic particles and being bombarded with radiation.
It sounds so difficult. It almost sounds impossible. The whole thing.
Yeah, but you know what? Nothing's impossible. People, they wanted to, like, it was probably impossible for them to travel at the time when they did it. It was impossible for them to travel to the Arctic. It was impossible for them to, at the turn of the century, to travel to the Antarctic. But now we have a colony on the Antarctic.
Right.
They do science there. We still have not particularly mastered the depths of the ocean, but people have gone there, right? And at one time it was impossible, and we still see the risks that are associated with that, right? You can think back to 2 years ago to the Titan submersible disaster. These things are challenging, but I just, I think it will be, if we don't off ourselves first in some nuclear catastrophe, or by allowing the global the planet to warm up too much, I think that we are going to develop the technology that will allow us to do these things, and sort of you know uh, explore these horizons.
So when do you think we're going to have that first journey to Mars? Obviously, this is speculative.
Listen, well, so you got the window every 2 years. You got a window in 2026, and we've got another window in 2028 and 2030. Uh 20. I think they'll send the first ships if the iteration of Starship continues properly, and we don't have too many problems. So if we do Flight 9 here and Starship doesn't actually blow up, and they can continue to make progress, I think that they'll probably be able to make the 2026 window for sending a ship. And if they can do that and it doesn't completely disintegrate, or if it can actually land properly on the surface of Mars, then I think 2028 is probably stretching it, maybe 2030 that they will send the first. But we also have to keep in mind that they're racing against the Chinese. I don't want to say something that I don't know to be true, but I suspect that the ethical considerations about the value of human lives might be different between the U.S. and China, and I think that China might be more willing to sacrifice lives to get there first than would the States. I could be wrong. I don't know that, but I think that will also play a part of it. And just the same way they had the race to get to the moon in the 60s between the United States and Russia, that is certainly going to be in the background, sort of pushing people forward. So yeah, so my prediction would be the 2026, they're going to send a ship, and they'll do so again in 2028, because I don't think the first time they do it, we see this now when they're testing Starship and the booster, things are not going to go flawlessly the first time. So they're going to send a ship. They'll have some kind of problems. They'll sort of work at that over the next 2 years to hit the next window. 2028, they'll send another ship. Things should go better. And then if everything goes well in 2028, 2030, they'll send some people.
Are you volunteering?
I'm not, but only because I think my wife would probably not like it very much if I had to do all the training for that. Picking my family up, moving them down to either Texas or Florida, having to do all that training. It's far from our families, and I thought, nah, she wouldn't really dig that. So in the end, I said no.
Maybe someday.
Maybe, if I become independently wealthy from YouTube or some other thing, then I would certainly consider one of these kind of tourist things, just to say I did it. Although it would be much cooler to be on something like what Jarek Isaac and did, or the canceled Dear Moon trip that was supposed to be going, so something like that. I know Jeff Bezos has got his thing where people can be up there for like 5-10 minutes.
It's like an 11-minute flight. I think it's 4 minutes of weightlessness.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So like, to be honest, I'd probably rather go on the Vomit Comet than to do that, because I don't think you can really say. yes, technically you are an astronaut, but you're not really an astronaut.
There's a lot of discussion of them, sending Tesla bots or Optimus robots at first to set things up and obviously reduce risk to actual humans. And, robots are getting more involved in the surgical field, including with Neuralink. Do you ever see a robot taking your job as an orthopedic surgeon?
Potentially, that, like, I did a video on that, and it's possible that that might happen. I don't think it's going to happen for a while. There are some things that you just need a human operator to sort of see something, recognize that it's it's unusual, and then have to respond to that in a way that a robot, at least at this point, can't do. Like, when I think about orthopedic robots, I have several colleagues that use robots for knee and hip replacement. And I didn't learn that in my residency, but when I was finishing up my residency, there were some guys that were experimenting with it. And now I have some colleagues that's all they do, and they use it all the time. And I myself, I thought, oh, I don't really want to learn how to do that. And their argument is that, well, you program your procedure on the computer, and then the robot's going to make sure that you have the cuts the way you want to, the implants are positioned the way you want to, and so there's less error and better alignment. But I think to myself, well, really, that relegates me to the role of a technician. And like, I'm just holding this thing and it's doing it all, and I'm just there to make sure it doesn't go Terminator T-1000 and start to chop people up. I went to university and for 17 years, and I think, why did I do all that if I'm going to have a robot do it? I like what I do. I like to use my hands. The studies have not shown yet that it is so much better, that it's statistically better at it can be more accurate with respect to the placement of implants, but there are no studies, at least to my knowledge, that have shown yet that increased accuracy has improved a patient's outcomes or function. And until it does that, I'm going to keep doing what I do because I like to use my hands. When I think about those robots, and I also think of robots in general surgery, the robots are used in such a way that they help perform the surgery, but by all means, they're not. You still have a surgeon operator. They don't do it autonomously.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a long way before you have robots that can do things autonomously. Eventually, they'll probably replace us, but not yet. When I think about it, that's probably another piece of equipment that they might bring, is like a Da Vinci robot, or a scaled down version of that, just because if you had a robot that's got multiple arms, you can have them assist and help to do retraction rather than having a human do that.
I take like a vitamin D and a calcium gummy supplement. Really delicious, by the way. Is that something that you think that we would even benefit from bringing on these missions, or is that not even effective here on Earth?
I'm not a big vitamin person. I do take vitamin C because I think that's helpful, and I take vitamin D, probably not as regularly as I should. I take vitamin C every day, vitamin D when I remember. But if you're eating a balanced diet of whole foods, you generally, I'm not a big supplement person, and I don't think you really need a lot of supplements. That's on Earth. In space, obviously, you're not going to be able to have fresh foods. You're going to have freeze-dried food or packaged foods, or like military ration type of stuff. So the nutrition is not going to be great. So yeah, supplementation in that context is going to be important. You're not going to be exposed to the sun. Vitamin D is going to be really important. They're probably actually going to have some kind of, whether it's in your sleeping chamber or whatever, lights that can give you some light exposure and give you some of that ultraviolet light there.
Maybe a little tanning bed on Starship.
And no, exactly, a little tanning beds.
I was going to say, if there was a dermatologist in the chat, they wouldn't like that comment about the tanning bed.
No, but listen, they ultimately they have to realize it's a trade-off, right? We need the vitamin D, and so we need some exposure to light. It's funny, like people when they get to Mars, they're all going to look like vampires, right? Because they're going to be so pale that it's going to be problematic. And you need vitamin D for bones, you need it for gut health, you need it for a bunch of things. So it's not necessarily the best thing on Earth, but when you're traveling in space, it may be worthwhile.
Because isn't most of the journey kind of going to be in the darkness too?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not this idea of like, oh, I'm seeing all these bright glowing objects. It's like mostly dark and depressing and
As they start to fly away from the sun and leave the sun behind, like it's going to be pretty bleak and dark. And yes, if you look out some of the windows, you'll be able to see like the view, for example, of the Milky Way that you might see compared to what we see here on Earth, or at least in populated areas. Like when I look up at the sky, I'm living in a big city, I can't see anything. I see a few bright stars, that's it. When you're in the country, when there's no lights and it's absolutely pitch black dark, you can see more. And when you're in space, you'd see more. But for the most part, it's going to just be black, like nothing, And so, yeah, you need something to stimulate. And our circadian clock needs that. People psychologically are going to need that.
yeah,
Because
for sure.
if they're just in the blackness for 6 months, I don't think people are going to handle that very well.
No. Well, hopefully it's in both of our lifetimes.
Listen, man, I'm hoping there's a few things that I would love to happen within my lifetime. One of them is I'd like to see people on the moon, working and building a colony, and I'd like to see people on Mars. I would also, although I don't think that it is going to happen during my lifetime, maybe yours, but I would like to see us confirm life on another planet. Or another in another solar system. And I know that they just recently found high levels of, I think it's DMS on a planet in another system. I don't think it was in the Kepler system. Maybe it was in the Kepler system. I can't remember. But they recently found that, and it's significantly more than what would be there just by chance. So they're taking more observations of that planet system to see. But it would be nice to have confirmation of that, because like I understand that we haven't seen it yet, and I understand the futility of the Drake equation. There's lots of patterns in life. There's lots of patterns in the universe. Like if there are 100 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy, and there are at least 100 billion galaxies that we know of, and we're finding new galaxies all the time, then I think purely from a numbers perspective, even if what we were super random and chance occurrence, I think just from the numbers alone, I think it's extremely unlikely that we're the only ones. And that's only in the universe that we know of. We still don't know what's on the outside of what is our universe. We could just be a small patch within a never-ending larger patch that goes on beyond our little small segment where our Big Bang occurred. If you ascribe to the idea of the multiverse and infinite other universes, then there could be way more out there. Obviously, there's the possibility that there are other ones, but we've just not come across them at our point in time. They either existed before us or they'll come after us. That's a possibility. But I think that there is a more than zero chance that there are others out there. There's other life. There's a more than zero chance that there's intelligent life. And it may happen at some great distance that we will never know that. But it would be nice to be able to have some confirmation that there are others out there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, some people say they're already here, so it's true.
I see some strange people all the time, man.
That's
So
a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. That would be an entirely separate conversation.
yes, yes.
Well, all I can say is that if you made it to the end of this video, you are a trooper, and I don't need to make this outro any longer than it needs to be, but thank you to Dr. Chris Rayner again for this interesting discussion. Be sure to check out his channel and subscribe to him, and thanks so much for supporting Ellie in Space. I'll see you in the next video.